What if you woke up tomorrow in one of the world's poorest countries? What would your life look like? It might be difficult to fully grasp the gravity of the situation faced by those living in the world's poorest countries, but let's try to understand it. These countries endure daily struggles that most of us can't even begin to imagine. Their reality is often marked by economic instability, social inequality, and environmental challenges. The global economic structure, often skewed in favor of wealthier nations, leaves them scrambling for resources, struggling to sustain their economies. Take, for instance, the recent climate talks where China, the world's largest emitter of greenhouse gases, indicated that establishing a fund to assist poor countries in addressing climate change would be a significant challenge. This raises concerns about whether developed countries will support developing countries in their fight against climate change. It's a clear example of how environmental issues intersect with economic ones, making it even harder for these countries to break the cycle of poverty. Now let's look at El Salvador's ambitious but stumbling Bitcoin experiment. A year after the announcement to build a Bitcoin city, the country is still struggling to find investors due to the volatile nature of Bitcoin. This highlights the risks that poorer countries face when trying to innovate and compete in a global economy. And then there's the issue of debt. Janet Yellen, the U.S. Treasury Secretary, recently called China a barrier to debt reform in Africa. This was met with a retort from Chinese officials, urging the U.S. to address its own debt problem. This exchange underscores the complex web of international debt, with poorest countries often shouldering a disproportionate burden. The world's poorest countries are facing monumental challenges, from climate change to economic instability. But understanding these struggles is the first step towards finding solutions that can help lift these countries out of poverty. How can the world help these struggling nations to rise above poverty? This question has been a centerpiece of global discourse for some time now, and there are a few potential strategies that have been proposed. One of these strategies involves wealthier nations stepping up to provide financial aid. An example of this is the proposed fund set up by richer countries, amounting to $100 billion per year. This fund aims to assist poorer countries in their efforts to combat climate change, a problem that disproportionately affects them. However, progress on this front has been slow, and there's been skepticism regarding whether developed nations will fully support this endeavor. In addition to direct financial aid, wealthier nations can play a critical role by helping to foster sustainable development in these struggling countries. This can be done by investing in their industries, providing training and education, and supporting their efforts to build resilient economies. International organizations also have a crucial role to play. Bodies like the United Nations, the International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank can promote policies that favor the world's poorest nations. This includes debt reform, which is critical given the crippling debts that many of these countries face. It's worth noting that China, as the world's largest emitter of greenhouse gases, considers itself a developing country and emphasizes the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities. This means that while all countries have a role to play in combating climate change, developed countries, due to their historical and current contributions to global emissions, should shoulder a larger share of the responsibility. In the end, it's clear that aiding the world's poorest nations is not just about charity. It's about justice, fairness, and a shared responsibility. It's about recognizing that the welfare of one nation impacts the welfare of all nations. And it's about understanding that the struggle against poverty is a global fight that we must all take part in. It is in the hands of the global community to enact change and provide support to those most in need. What does the future hold for the world's poorest countries? In an ever-evolving global landscape, the future of these nations remains, in many ways, a puzzle yet to be solved. If current trends persist, the growing debt burden and the impacts of climate change could continue to exacerbate the challenges these countries face, making it harder for them to break free from the shackles of poverty. The plan of El Salvador to adopt Bitcoin as legal tender, for instance, has stumbled, demonstrating the unpredictability of such innovative measures. However, if the proposed solutions are implemented, including the establishment of a significant fund to aid poorer countries in addressing climate change, and the fostering of debt reform in regions like Africa, there's a potential for a brighter future. These measures could provide the much-needed impetus for economic growth, environmental sustainability, and overall development. In this dynamic world, staying informed is key. It's by understanding these issues that we can start to make a difference. whether that's through advocacy, responsible decision-making, or direct support to poverty reduction initiatives. The future of the world's poorest countries hinges on the actions we take today.